The ground beneath their feet was warning them, but they didn't listen. Ancient cities flourished by reshaping nature to serve human needs, rerouting rivers, clearing forests, building fields where wild ecosystems once stood. But when they pushed too far, nature responded. Not with fire, not with war, but with silence. Crops failed, water sources vanished, entire populations disappeared. And the cities built to conquer the earth? Slowly, they were reclaimed by it. In this video of Armchair Archaeology, we'll uncover how ancient civilizations didn't just live in nature, they transformed it. From rainforest kingdoms to desert empires, some adapted with astonishing brilliance. Others collapsed under the weight of their own ambition. And just as they faced tipping points, so do we. Their stories are more than ancient history. They're warnings written in stone and soil. And by the end, we'll reveal the ancient metropolis so ingeniously designed, it functioned like a living organism, complete with a climate control system built thousands of years before modern air conditioning. What that city accomplished might hold the key to how we survive the environmental challenges of our own future. If you're enjoying this dive into ancient history and environmental genius, make sure to subscribe to Armchair Archaeology. We uncover the past to better understand our future every week. History is often told through monuments, wars, and empires, but it's also a story of soil, water, and climate. From the very beginning, the rise of civilization has been inseparable from the environments that made human settlement possible. People didn't just adapt to nature, they studied it, shaped it, and in many cases depended entirely on its cooperation. The first cities weren't built at random. They emerged in places where geography offered opportunity: river valleys, coastal plains, highlands rich in rainfall. Jericho, one of the oldest known settlements on Earth, was founded over 11,000 years ago, not for conquest or defense, but because a freshwater spring bubbled up from the desert. That decision, to settle around a natural resource, marked the beginning of an enduring pattern: environment as destiny. But these environments didn't remain untouched. As ancient societies grew, so did their impact. Forests were cleared, wetlands drained, rivers diverted. Human hands began sculpting landscapes not only to survive, but to thrive. And in some cases, this transformation was profound. In the Amazon rainforest, long assumed to be untouched wilderness, satellite imaging has revealed massive ancient settlements, road systems, and carefully modified soil known as terra preta. Created through the controlled use of fire and organic matter, this engineered soil remains fertile even centuries later, evidence of large-scale environmental design that reshaped entire ecosystems. This flips the usual script. Nature didn't merely host ancient civilizations, it was in conversation with them, changed by them, cultivated by them, and sometimes it remembered. The roots of our cities were planted in cooperation with the land, understanding that ancient bond isn't just about the past. It's about recognizing that every society, then and now, stands on the foundation of its environment. In the land between the Tigris and Euphrates, ancient Mesopotamian civilizations turned harsh, arid plains into thriving centers of agriculture and innovation. The Sumerians, Akkadians, Babylonians, and Assyrians built the first true cities, pioneered writing, and created complex legal systems. But their greatest achievement and eventual downfall was tied to one thing: water. They mastered irrigation, carving canals across the floodplains to bring river water into fields that otherwise couldn't support crops. This allowed cities like Uruk and Ur to grow in size and complexity. Yet the success of irrigation hid a quiet danger. As water evaporated in the sun, it left behind salts in the soil. Over time, that invisible residue built up, choking out plant life and reducing harvests. The consequences became so severe that farmers had to abandon wheat, their primary staple, in favor of barley, less desirable, but more tolerant of salty earth. What may seem like innovation today was, in fact, a forced response to environmental degradation. The problems didn't stop with agriculture. Wood was scarce, so forests were overharvested to fuel kilns, build boats, and make bricks. Without trees, erosion worsened. Silt clogged the irrigation canals. The land itself, once engineered for abundance, began to fail. Collapse didn't happen overnight. It came slowly, over centuries, as each generation inherited a landscape a little more strained than the last. Imagine living in a city where the fields stop producing and the canals clog with silt. Slow changes, barely noticed until they spiral beyond control. The empires of Mesopotamia didn't fall because they lacked intelligence or technology. They fell because their environment, pushed too far, could no longer support them. And if you're fascinated by the rise and fall of early empires, you'll love our ebook, Secrets of the Ancient World. It dives deeper into lost cities, ancient technologies, and unsolved mysteries. Links in the pinned comment. It's a pattern we still recognize today. Mesopotamia teaches us that ecological limits are not just a modern concern. They are a recurring theme in human history and a warning written in the ruined bricks of the world's first cities. While many ancient civilizations struggled against nature, Egypt thrived by working with it. At the heart of this success was the Nile, a river that flooded like clockwork, turning barren desert into fertile farmland. To the Egyptians, the flood wasn't chaos, it was rhythm, and from that rhythm, a civilization lasting over 3,000 years emerged. The Nile's annual overflow deposited nutrient-rich silt along its banks, rejuvenating the soil year after year. The Egyptians timed their planting and harvesting cycles to this natural calendar. Their agricultural system was so well attuned to the river that it became the foundation for tax collection, labor planning, and even religious festivals. Their economy, their beliefs, even their identity were synchronized with the river's rhythm. Nature and culture braided together. Rather than build massive dams or impose control, they enhanced the natural flow, digging canals, constructing basins, and directing water where it was most needed. These methods extended the river's benefits deep into the desert, transforming a narrow green strip into a productive agricultural engine. So effective were their practices that modern soil studies reveal some Egyptian farmland remained fertile for over 3 millennia. This wasn't accidental, it was the result of a long-standing, deliberate relationship with the land, one that prioritized balance over extraction. But even this harmony had its limits. When the Nile's floods failed, due to distant climatic shifts or local drought, famine followed. The system was sustainable, but not invulnerable. The river gave, but it could also withhold. Egypt's legacy is usually told in temples, pyramids, and pharaohs. Yet perhaps its most remarkable achievement was an environmental model built not on conquest, but cooperation. In an age defined by dominance over nature, the Egyptians thrived by listening to it. Their story offers a powerful reminder. Sustainability isn't just a modern concern. It's an ancient practice, tested over thousands of years. In the thick jungles of Mesoamerica, the Maya built towering cities, complex calendars, and astronomical observatories, achievements that rivaled those of any ancient power. But what makes their story so compelling isn't just their brilliance. It's the fragile balance they struck with the rainforest, and what happened when that balance broke. To support a growing population, the Maya cleared forest for fields, quarried limestone for temples, and constructed elaborate water systems to manage a landscape with unpredictable rainfall. In places where rivers were scarce, they built reservoirs, canals, and even artificial wetlands. This was innovation born of necessity, and for centuries it worked. But growth had consequences. As deforestation accelerated, rainfall patterns began to shift. The forest, once a climate stabilizer, could no longer buffer against prolonged droughts. With less tree cover, soil eroded and water sources dried up. When a major drought struck in the 9th century, it hit an already weakened system. Pollen records from lake sediments show the sudden disappearance of forest species, replaced by dust and charcoal, evidence of both environmental collapse and human struggle. The jungle, once a partner in prosperity, turned against them, slowly, silently, until it was too late to reverse. Even more haunting are the thousands of dry, unused reservoirs scattered through the jungle. Built to catch rains that never returned, they stand as silent witnesses to a fading civilization. The Maya collapse wasn't immediate or total. Some city-states survived, others were abandoned. But the heart of the classic Maya world unraveled, not through invasion, but through ecological strain. The rainforest, which once fed the Maya, ultimately outlasted them. And in that reversal lies a powerful lesson. Even the most advanced societies can fall when they forget the limits of the land that sustains them. The jungle may have reclaimed the temples, but the warning remains, rooted in the soil. Which ancient civilization do you think had the smartest environmental strategy? Drop your thoughts in the comments. We read every one. In the soaring heights of the Andes, the Inca carved out one of the most astonishing empires in human history. Not by overcoming nature, but by adapting to its extremes. At altitudes where others might see only stone and sky, the Inca saw potential. They sculpted steep slopes into agricultural terraces, each one designed to reduce erosion, capture water, and create microclimates suited for different crops. These terraces weren't makeshift fixes. They were engineered solutions, part of a vast agricultural system capable of feeding millions across an empire that stretched more than 2,500 miles. Water was no less crucial. The Inca built intricate irrigation channels, fountains, and storage tanks that managed runoff and directed it precisely where it was needed. But they went further. In regions with unpredictable weather, they diversified their crops across different altitudes. Potatoes might grow at one level, maize at another, quinoa at yet another. If one harvest failed, others could still succeed. And at sites like Moray, they created concentric terraces that simulated various climate zones, effectively turning the Earth itself into a research station. These natural laboratories allowed them to experiment with crops, select for resilience, and refine their farming across generations. It's a level of agricultural intelligence that modern scientists are still studying today. It's a reminder that sustainability isn't just conservation. It can be creative, dynamic, and deeply scientific. Even after the empire fell to Spanish conquest, much of the infrastructure endured. In some Andean villages, farmers still plant on Inca terraces, drawing from knowledge passed down over 500 years. The Inca didn't just build in the mountains, they built with them. They read the land, respected its challenges, and turned geography into strategy. In a time when environmental extremes threatened survival, they created stability not by conquering the land, but by listening to it layer by layer, altitude by altitude. Ancient Greece is often remembered for its philosophy, democracy, and architecture. But behind that cultural brilliance was an environment slowly being pushed beyond its limits. The rocky hills and thin soils of the Greek mainland were never especially generous, so when population and ambition grew, the landscape paid the price. To support agriculture, build ships, and expand cities, the Greeks cleared vast areas of forest. Timber became essential for construction, heating, and naval dominance. But once the forests were gone, the consequences began to cascade. Without deep-rooted trees, rainwater no longer stayed in the soil. Erosion accelerated. Fertile land turned rocky. Springs and streams began to dry up. Ancient writers like Plato and Theophrastus described these changes in striking terms, recalling a time when their homelands were lush and wooded. Modern geological surveys have confirmed their memories. Sediment layers show that large-scale erosion began during the classical period. On the island of Euboea, researchers discovered an entire forest system that vanished within just a few centuries, not because of fire or drought, but due to overgrazing by goats, introduced in large numbers to supply growing urban markets. It wasn't conquest or catastrophe, it was commerce and neglect, the slow violence of short-term gain over long-term balance. A single species, unmanaged, helped collapse an entire ecosystem. The decline wasn't abrupt, but it was real. Depleted soil meant smaller harvests. Regions lost self-sufficiency. Political and economic centers gradually shifted elsewhere. It's a pattern we still see today. Deforestation and overgrazing continue to erode landscapes in places like Madagascar, the Sahel, and parts of the Amazon. Ancient Greece reminds us that environmental decline is often gradual, quiet enough to ignore until it's too late. Their legacy lives in temples and texts, but the land beneath those ruins tells another story. Brilliance alone cannot sustain a civilization when the ground itself begins to fail. By the way, if this kind of insight fascinates you, check out Secrets of the Ancient World. From Atlantis to the Antikythera mechanism, it's packed with deep dives into the ancient innovations and mysteries we feature here. Grab it from the link in the pinned comment. Again and again, we see a pattern. Where civilizations thrived, they listened to the land. Where they faltered, they pushed too far. It's a rhythm repeated across time and terrain. The Indus Valley civilization doesn't always get the spotlight it deserves, but its cities, flourishing over 4,000 years ago, were some of the most advanced the ancient world had ever seen. While other civilizations built monumental temples, the people of the Indus built systems, grids of streets, standardized bricks, and, most impressively, highly sophisticated water infrastructure. Cities like Mohenjo-Daro and Harappa featured public baths, private wells, covered drains, and reservoirs, all carefully planned to manage both drinking water and waste. These weren't improvised solutions. They were signs of long-term civic thinking, with water at the heart of urban life. Managing water in a semi-arid region prone to flooding and drought wasn't easy, yet the Indus people constructed large-scale reservoirs and stormwater channels to capture and store rain during monsoons, ensuring supply during dry seasons. Archaeologists have even uncovered flood platforms, raised sections of cities built to keep essential structures above water during seasonal inundations. What's most astonishing is how well these systems endured. In some areas, remnants of the original drainage and water control systems still function today. That's not just archaeological trivia. It's proof of engineering that prioritized durability and resilience. Unlike many of their contemporaries, the people of the Indus Valley seem to have pursued growth without overexploiting their environment. There's no clear evidence of massive deforestation or soil exhaustion. Instead, their cities were integrated into the landscape with a degree of ecological foresight that feels surprisingly modern. Eventually, the civilization declined, possibly due to tectonic shifts or river course changes. But their legacy remains, not in towering monuments, but in bricks and drains. And perhaps that's the more important inheritance. a reminder that the most enduring systems are often the quietest and the most sustainable. The Roman Empire was built on engineering, expansion, and efficiency. Roads stretched across continents, aqueducts carried water for miles, and cities hummed with the movement of goods and people. But all this infrastructure came at a cost, not just in labor or resources, but in environmental consequences that shaped entire regions. To feed its cities and legions, Rome demanded agricultural output on a massive scale. Forests across Europe and North Africa were cleared to plant wheat, grapes, and olives. Timber was harvested not just for homes and ships, but to fire the baths and brick kilns that defined Roman urban life. As trees disappeared, soil erosion worsened. Rivers silted up. Local ecosystems were pushed to their limits. Mining intensified the damage. In Spain, the Romans used a method called ruina montium, the wrecking of mountains, which employed hydraulic pressure to collapse hillsides and expose ore. It was effective but devastating. These operations released heavy metals into rivers, leaving pollution so severe that traces of Roman lead mining are still detectable in Greenland's ice cores. Their reach was vast, but so was their impact, marking not just maps, but geology itself. Even Rome itself became unsustainable. With over 1 million people, the city couldn't feed or fuel itself. Grain came from Egypt and North Africa. Firewood arrived from distant provinces. Rome had become an early example of a city whose ecological footprint extended far beyond its borders. When the empire finally fractured, many of its lands were already exhausted. The roads remained, but the forests were gone. The mines spent, the soil degraded. If you're enjoying this journey and want to support more content like this, consider tapping the Super Thanks button below. It helps us keep exploring and sharing these stories with you. Rome's legacy is impressive, but its environmental story is sobering. It reminds us that even the most advanced systems can collapse under the weight of their own consumption. Expansion without regeneration doesn't build an empire, it empties one. Across the vast Pacific, Polynesian navigators achieved one of humanity's most extraordinary feats, settling thousands of islands scattered across open ocean, guided only by stars, waves, and memory. These voyages were acts of boldness and skill, but also of ecological consequence. Each island was a unique ecosystem, isolated, delicately balanced, and often unprepared for the arrival of humans. When Polynesians made landfall, they brought with them plants, animals, and new land use practices. On some islands, these blended successfully with the local environment. On others, they triggered collapse. Rapa Nui, better known as Easter Island, tells the most dramatic version of this story. Forests were cleared to grow food, build canoes, and transport the island's massive moai statues. As tree cover vanished, soil degraded, and fresh water became scarce. When drought struck, the island could no longer sustain its population. By the time Europeans arrived, the land was bare, and its society severely diminished. But the Polynesian story doesn't end in failure. On Tikopia, a tiny island in the Solomon Islands, another Polynesian society developed strict environmental practices over centuries. They maintained forest cover, regulated fishing, and even limited population through cultural taboos and social controls. Their methods weren't improvised, they were intentional, and they worked. Today, low-lying islands across the Pacific are again facing existential threats, this time from rising seas and climate change. The choices these ancient voyagers made echo through time, offering both caution and hope. Polynesia's legacy is more than navigation and survival. It's a record of how humans interact with fragile environments, sometimes destructively, sometimes sustainably. In that contrast lies the lesson. Resilience is not just about endurance, but about knowing the limits of the land beneath your feet and respecting them. The civilizations we've explored were separated by oceans, climates, and centuries, but they shared something fundamental, a relationship with the environment that shaped their rise and often their fall. Their ruins tell us not just what they built, but how they lived and how they failed to adapt when nature's limits pushed back. In Mesopotamia, over-irrigation salted the land. In Greece, deforestation led to erosion and decline. The Maya overextended their rainforest ecosystem. But in the Nile Valley and the Andes, we saw long-term sustainability, civilizations that lasted for centuries by working with, rather than against, their surroundings. Today, we face similar choices, but on a planetary scale. Climate change, soil exhaustion, water scarcity, and deforestation aren't new problems. What's new is the speed, scale, and stakes. Ancient people didn't have satellites or global markets, but they had to navigate the same truth we face now. No society survives if it exhausts its environment. And that's the enduring lesson. Technology and intelligence alone don't guarantee survival. It's the decisions made, generation after generation, about how we manage resources, plan for uncertainty, and value the ecosystems we depend on. What makes this history more than just interesting is how eerily familiar it feels. The crises these civilizations faced were cumulative, often invisible at first, until they became impossible to ignore. That pattern hasn't changed, and neither has the opportunity to choose differently. The past doesn't offer us a perfect blueprint, but it does offer something just as valuable: perspective. We've been here before, in different forms, under different skies. The question isn't whether civilizations collapse, it's whether we recognize the signs early enough to chart a different path. Throughout this journey, we've seen civilizations build incredible societies, some that endured, others that collapsed, all shaped by how they understood and treated the natural world. But amid the cautionary tales, there are blueprints, examples of environmental brilliance that still echo today. And now, as promised at the beginning of this story, we return to one of the most astonishing examples of ancient environmental design: Teotihuacan. At its height, over 1,500 years ago, Teotihuacan was one of the largest cities on Earth. But its true marvel wasn't just its scale, it was how the city functioned. The entire urban layout was designed with the environment in mind. Buildings were aligned not only with astronomical events, but with prevailing wind patterns and solar exposure. Its wide avenues and open plazas allowed for natural airflow, helping cool the city in the scorching valley of Mexico. Engineered canals collected and redistributed water, while drainage systems controlled flooding and erosion. Even the materials used in construction helped regulate temperature. In effect, Teotihuacan created a kind of passive climate control system, an ancient city that breathed with its environment. It's a reminder that advanced engineering isn't always loud or towering. Sometimes it's subtle, systemic, and deeply rooted in the rhythms of nature. As we face modern environmental challenges, from urban heat islands to water scarcity, Teotihuacan's legacy feels startlingly relevant. Ancient solutions may not replace modern ones, but they can inform them. And sometimes they reveal possibilities we've forgotten. And if you want to keep the journey going beyond this video, Secrets of the Ancient World is your next step. It's the perfect companion for any curious mind. Find the link in the pinned comment. Thank you for joining Armchair Archaeology on this journey through the environmental legacies of the ancient world. What other civilizations should we explore next? Let us know in the comments, and don't forget to like, subscribe, and keep questioning. Until next time, keep learning, keep exploring, and remember, the past is never just behind us. It's beneath us, waiting to be uncovered.